Millionaire catches his son on the street, begging for food. And the reason leaves him shocked. Thomas Anderson never imagined his perfect life would crumble on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon when he stopped at the traffic light on Fifth Avenue, returning from yet another business meeting worth millions. His tech company was at its peak, his family lived in the most expensive mansion in Beverly Hills, and he considered himself an absolutely successful man. That's when his eyes fixed on the sidewalk, and his heart almost stopped beating. There, holding a cardboard sign with the word "food" written in a child's handwriting, was Ethan, his 9-year-old son. The boy wore the red polo shirt from the most expensive private school in New York City, but there was something about his posture, the way he held that sign, that made Thomas question if he wasn't hallucinating. "It can't be," he murmured, adjusting his glasses and leaning his body out the window of the Lexus. The light was taking forever to change, and Thomas had time to observe every detail. It was really Ethan. The same neatly cut blonde hair, the same blue eyes, the same dimple in his chin. But what shocked him most was realizing his son wasn't alone. 3 small children, visibly malnourished and wearing worn-out clothes, hid behind him as if the boy were their protector. The businessman tried to open the car door, but his hands were shaking so much he couldn't manage it. When he finally managed to unlock the door, the light changed, and the cars behind began honking impatiently. Thomas looked forward for a second, and when he turned his eyes back to the sidewalk, Ethan and the other children had disappeared like ghosts in the crowd. During the entire drive home, Thomas drove on autopilot, trying to process what he had seen. How was it possible that his son, who had everything a child could want, was begging for food on the street? And why wasn't he in school at that hour? Arriving at the mansion, Thomas parked the car and remained seated for a few minutes, watching the imposing facade of his home. The perfectly trimmed gardens, the crystal-clear pool, the 3 luxury cars in the garage. Everything seemed normal, but nothing made sense anymore. "Jennifer," he shouted upon entering the house, tossing his keys onto the marble console table in the entryway. His wife came down the stairs elegantly, as always. Jennifer was a beautiful 40-year-old woman, always impeccably dressed, who dedicated her time to charity work and benefit lunches with the other wives of Manhattan's high society. "You're home early today," she commented, giving him a kiss on the cheek. "Any problems at the company?" "Where's Ethan?" Thomas asked directly, ignoring her question. "At school, of course. Why?" "I'm certain I saw our son begging for food on Fifth Avenue half an hour ago." Jennifer laughed, a nervous laugh that didn't reach her eyes. "Thomas, you've been working too hard. You're seeing things. Ethan is safe at school, as always." But the expression on her face said otherwise. There was something she knew and wasn't telling. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Thomas went up to his son's room. Everything was in order, as always. The bed was made, the toys organized, the school books stacked on the study desk. But there was something different. In the desk drawer, he found several pieces of cardboard cut into small sizes, exactly like the sign Ethan was holding on the street. "Jennifer, come here now." She came up reluctantly, finding her husband holding the pieces of cardboard. "How do you explain this?" They're school projects, art projects. Art projects that teach how to make signs for begging for food. Jennifer's silence was more revealing than any explanation. That evening, Ethan came home at the usual time, brought by the school driver as usual. During dinner, Thomas observed his son's every move, looking for signs of what he had seen earlier. "How was school today, son?" "Normal, Dad," Ethan replied without looking up from his plate. "Did you do any special activities? Did you leave the school?" The boy hesitated for a fraction of a second. "No, Dad. We stayed in the classroom the whole time." Thomas knew that hesitation well. It was the same one he himself used when lying in business meetings. The next morning, Thomas cancelled all his meetings. For the first time in years, he decided to follow his own son. He parked at a safe distance from the school and waited. At 10:30 in the morning, He saw Ethan leave through the back of the institution, carrying a backpack that looked heavy. The businessman followed the boy on foot, keeping his distance. Ethan walked for 20 minutes, until he reached a neighborhood that Thomas didn't even know existed. Simple houses, unpaved streets, children playing in the dirt. It was as if they had entered another world. Hidden behind an old car, Thomas watched his son take several sandwiches, juices, and fruits out of his backpack. The same children he had seen on Fifth Avenue appeared as if by magic, and Ethan distributed all the food among them, keeping only a small apple for himself. "Thank you, Ethan," said a girl of about 7 with curly hair and a gap-toothed smile. "My mum said if it weren't for you, we wouldn't have eaten yesterday." "Did Aunt Sarah get over her fever?" Ethan asked, showing genuine concern. "Yes, she did. She sent this for you." The girl handed over a drawing made with crayons, showing a smiling family. Thomas felt a tightness in his chest, seeing his son's happy face as he received that simple drawing. After distributing all the food, Ethan played with the children for an hour. They ran, played ball with a dented can, and laughed as if they were the best friends in the world. The businessman had never seen his son so genuinely happy. When Ethan began to prepare to return, Thomas ran to his car and arrived at the school before him. His mind was a jumble of conflicting emotions: pride in his son's generosity, concern about the risks he was taking, and a strange guilt he couldn't explain. That night, Thomas called Jennifer for a serious talk in his office. "I saw everything today. I know what Ethan is doing." Jennifer sighed and sat in the chair opposite his desk. "How long have you known?" 2 weeks, Mrs. Wilson told me." Mrs. Wilson had been the housekeeper for 15 years, a woman in her 60s who treated Ethan as if he were her own grandson. "And why didn't you tell me?" "Because I knew what your reaction would be. You would forbid it, make a scene, and then forget about it by going back to your important meetings." Jennifer's words were like a punch to the stomach. Thomas realized she was right. In recent years, he had become a stranger in his own home, delegating his son's education entirely to his wife and the housekeeper. How did he meet these children? The school took a field trip to a community center in the neighborhood. Ethan came home saying there were children who had nothing to eat, and he asked if he could help. I said we could make a donation, but he insisted he wanted to meet each one of them personally. "And you let him?" "At first I went with him, but then I realized he had formed a real bond with those families. It wasn't just charity, Thomas. It was true friendship." Thomas fell silent, processing the information. "But why did he ask for food on the street?" "Because the lunch money wasn't enough to buy food for all the children. He started skipping meals to help more." The businessman felt a chill down his spine. His son was literally going hungry to feed others. "And you allowed this?" "I tried to give him more money, but he refused. Said he didn't want it to be easy money. He wanted it to be something he earned." The following week, Thomas made a decision. He would secretly follow his son a few more times to better understand the whole situation. What he discovered shocked him even more. Ethan wasn't just bringing food to the children. He had become a kind of leader in that small group. He helped with homework when paper and pencils were available, organized educational games, and even comforted the children when they cried from sadness. On a Thursday, Thomas witnessed a scene that would stay with him forever. One of the children, a boy named Michael, 8 years old, was crying because his mother was sick and he didn't know what to do. "Don't cry, Michael," Ethan said, putting his hand on his friend's shoulder. "My mother always says that when we're sad, we have to think about the good things that are still going to happen. But what if my mother doesn't get better? She will get better, and in the meantime, we'll take care of you, okay? Our family isn't just who lives in the same house, it's who we choose to love." Thomas had to step away so the children wouldn't see him crying. At 9 years old, his son showed an emotional maturity that many adults didn't possess, but the situation took an unexpected turn the following Friday. During an important meeting with Japanese investors, Thomas's secretary entered the room with a panicked expression. "Mr. Anderson, I need to speak with you urgently." "Not now, Amanda, I'm in a meeting." "It's about your son, sir." The businessman excused himself from the investors and left the room. "What happened?" "I received an anonymous call saying your son is begging for food on the street and that they'll release photos if you don't pay $100,000. Thomas felt the ground give way beneath his feet. Someone had discovered what Ethan was doing and wanted to blackmail the family. Who called? They didn't identify themselves. They said they'd call again in 2 hours. The businessman cancelled the meeting and rushed home. He found Jennifer and Mrs. Wilson in the kitchen, talking in low tones. "Someone wants to blackmail us because of Ethan," he said without preamble. "What do you mean?" Jennifer paled. "Someone has photos of him begging for food and wants money not to release them." Mrs. Wilson got up from the table with a serious expression. "I have something to tell you both." "What is it?" 2 weeks ago, I saw a man taking pictures of Ethan in the neighborhood. I thought it was strange, but I thought he might be a journalist doing a story on poverty. Now I realize it might have been on purpose. Why didn't you tell us? Because you two are always too busy to listen to what I have to say about the boy, she answered with painful honesty. At that moment, Ethan came through the kitchen door, home from school. Seeing the 3 adults with serious faces, he immediately realized something was wrong. Did something happen? Thomas looked at his son and felt a mixture of pride and despair. How do you explain to a 9-year-old that his kindness had become a weapon in the hands of malicious people? "Son, I need you to tell me the whole truth about your trips to the Hope Springs neighborhood." Ethan looked at Mrs. Wilson, then at his mother, and finally at his father. "Can I trust you, Dad?" The question was like a stab in the heart. Thomas realized he had become a stranger to his own son, someone the child didn't know if he could trust. "Yes, son, you can trust me completely." And then Ethan told everything. From the first day he met the children of Hope Springs, through the strategies he used to get more food, to the plans he had made to try to find a way to help the families get work. "Dad," Michael said. His mother knows how to sew very well, but no one gives her a job because she lives far away, and Aunt Patricia makes delicious sweets, but she doesn't have money to open a little shop. I thought maybe you could help them find work. Thomas Anderson was speechless. While he worried only about profits and investments, his 9-year-old son was thinking about sustainable solutions to complex social problems. The phone rang. It was the blackmail call. "Hello? Mr. Anderson? I believe you've already received our message. What do you want?" $200,000, otherwise the photos of your heir begging for money will be in all the newspapers tomorrow morning. And if I don't pay, I imagine what will happen to your company's reputation when everyone finds out that the son of the great businessman Thomas Anderson is going hungry on the streets of New York City. Thomas looked at Ethan, who was watching the whole conversation with wide eyes. "I'll call back in an hour," he said and hung up. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. "Dad, what were they talking about?" Ethan asked, visibly frightened. Thomas knelt in front of his son and looked him in the eyes. "Son, some people took pictures of you helping your friends, and now they want money not to show these pictures to other people. But why would that be bad? I was just helping." "It wouldn't be bad, son. What you're doing is beautiful. But there are bad people in the world who use even good things to try to get money." Jennifer approached and put her hand on her son's shoulder. "Ethan, maybe it's best you stop going to the neighborhood for a few days until we sort this out." "No," the boy exclaimed, surprising everyone with the firmness of his answer. "The children depend on me. If I don't go, they won't have anything to eat today." "Son, it's dangerous now. Dad, you always taught me that I can't give up when things get tough. Why should I give up on the people I love?" Thomas felt tears in his eyes. When had he taught that to his son? He barely remembered having serious conversations with Ethan in recent years. "All right," he said, making a decision that surprised everyone. "You will continue helping your friends, but now I'm coming with you." "Really? Really? And we won't pay any blackmail. If people want to know why my son helps underprivileged children, I will tell the truth with pride." That same day, Thomas and Ethan went together to Hope Springs. The businessman was shocked to see up close the conditions those families lived in. 2-room houses sheltering 6 or 7 people, children playing in open sewage, unemployed adults sitting on the sidewalks without hope. But what impressed him most was the reception they gave his son. Ethan was treated like a hero in that place. The children ran to hug him, the adults greeted him with genuine affection, and several mothers made a point of telling how the boy had saved their families from hunger in critical moments. "Your boy is an angel, Mr. Anderson," said Mrs. Catherine, a 60-year-old lady who took care of 4 grandchildren. "Last week, my little granddaughter was sick, and we didn't even have money for the bus to the hospital. Ethan showed up here with medicine and even brought borrowed money for the appointment." "Borrowed?" "He said when we could, we should pay it back to help another family. What a smart boy you have." Thomas looked at his son with an admiration he had never felt before. Ethan had created a sustainable mutual aid system where people's dignity was preserved. For 2 hours, the businessman spoke with several families, learning their stories, their dreams, and their talents wasted by lack of opportunity. There were talented seamstresses, experienced cooks, skilled bricklayers, all unemployed simply because they had no connections in the job market. On the way back home, Thomas and Ethan stopped at a diner. "Son, I need to ask you a question." "Go ahead, Dad." "Why did you never ask me for help for your friends?" Ethan stirred his soda with the straw, thoughtful. "Because you always say that poor people are poor because they don't want to work. I wanted to prove to you that it's not true." Thomas felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. When had he said that in front of his son? How many other prejudiced and cruel things had he said, without realizing he was shaping how Ethan saw the world? "Son, I was wrong. Very wrong. The people you help aren't poor because of laziness. They just need an opportunity. So you will help them. We will help them together, but in a way that preserves their dignity like you did." Ethan's eyes shone with joy. "Really, Dad?" "Really." That night, Thomas had a long conversation with Jennifer. She confessed that she had supported their son from the beginning because she understood the pain of those children. There was a secret she had never told her husband. "Thomas, I wasn't born rich like you think." "What do you mean?" "I grew up in the outskirts of New Orleans. My father was a garbage collector. My mother took in laundry. When we met in college, I made up a story about my family because I was ashamed of my background." Thomas was shocked. 20 years of marriage, and he didn't know his own wife's true story. "Why did you never tell me?" "Because on our first dates you made several jokes about poor people, prejudiced comments that hurt me, but that I swallowed because I was in love. Over time you became even more elitist, and I didn't know how to tell you the truth without you looking down on me." "I would never look down on you, Jennifer." "No? When was the last time you treated a cleaning person with kindness, or greeted the building's doorman? You've turned into someone I don't recognize, Thomas." Her words were devastating because they were true. Thomas had become arrogant and insensitive without realizing it. "I want to change, Jennifer. For you, for Ethan, and for myself." "Prove it," she said, simply. The following Monday, exactly what the blackmailer had threatened happened. The photos of Ethan asking for food were on an internet gossip blog, accompanied by a sensationalist article about the millionaire's son who begs for alms. Thomas arrived at the office and found his partners in a panic. "Thomas, this is a disaster," said Richard, his majority partner. "The investors are questioning our management ability. How could you not know what your own son was doing?" "I knew. You knew, and I completely support him." The silence in the room was absolute. "Richard, how many children do you have?" "3. Have any of them ever shown genuine concern for the suffering of other children?" "Well, they are too young to..." "Ethan is 9 years old and gave up his own meals to feed hungry children. I am proud of him. But Thomas, this could affect our corporate image." "Then let's use our corporate image to do some good with it." That same afternoon, Thomas called a press conference. Instead of apologizing or denying, he told the whole story. He spoke about his son's generosity, about the families he had met in Hope Springs, and about how that experience had changed his worldview. "My son taught me that true success isn't measured just in dollars, but in the ability to make a difference in other people's lives," he declared to the cameras. The reaction was surprising. Instead of criticism, Thomas received hundreds of supportive messages from other parents, praise from social organizations, and even partnership proposals from companies that identified with the message. But the most emotional moment was when Ethan watched the interview on television at home. "Dad, did you say all that about me on TV?" "I spoke the truth, son. You've made me a proud father." Ethan ran to hug his father, and Thomas felt he had finally reconnected with his son in a genuine way. However, the problems were far from over. Richard and the other partners began pressuring Thomas to step away from the company, claiming his new philanthropic phase was harming business. "Thomas, you're being too emotional," Richard said during a tense meeting. "Business is no place for sentimentality." "And why not?" "Because our commitment is to shareholder profit, not to social assistance. Who says we can't have both?" "Do you want to turn our company into a non-profit?" "I want to turn our company into a place where people are proud to work, and that contributes positively to society." The discussion escalated until Richard gave an ultimatum. Either Thomas returned to normal, or he would be forced to sell his shares. That night, Thomas discussed the situation with his family. "If I fight with the partners, I could lose the company I built over 15 years. And if you don't fight, you could lose your son's respect for the rest of your life," Jennifer replied. "Dad, I don't want you to lose your job because of me," Ethan said, his eyes filled with tears. "Son, none of this is your fault. The fault is mine, for taking so long to realize what truly matters in life." "So, what will you do?" Thomas looked at his son and made the most difficult decision of his career. "I'll create a new company, a company that combines profit with purpose, that provides job opportunities for people like your friends from Hope Springs." "But Dad, are you starting from scratch?" "No, son, I'm starting with something much more valuable than money. I'm starting with the right people by my side." The following week, Thomas presented his final proposal to the partners. Transform the company into a social benefit corporation, allocating a portion of profits to social inclusion projects. Richard and the other partners immediately rejected the proposal. "You've gone mad, Thomas. This is corporate suicide." "Then I'll sell my shares to you and leave." "Perfect. That way you'll stop interfering with our business with this social responsibility nonsense." Thomas sold his shares below market value, just to quickly exit the company. With the money, he created a new company called Digital Opportunity, focused on providing technology services while employing people in socially vulnerable situations. But starting a company from scratch wasn't easy. Thomas had to drastically reduce his standard of living. The family moved from their Beverly Hills mansion to a smaller house in a middle-class neighborhood. They sold 2 of their 3 luxury cars and cut unnecessary expenses. "Dad, I feel guilty about all this," Ethan said one night, watching his father study financial spreadsheets late into the evening. "Why, son?" "Because if I hadn't helped those children, none of this would have happened." Thomas put down his papers and sat beside his son on the couch. "Ethan, do you know what the most important day of my life was? The day I was born? That was the day I discovered who my son really is. A brave, generous, and fair boy. Everything that happened afterward was a consequence of my decision to become a father worthy of a son like you. But what if the new company doesn't work out? Then we'll try again, and again, until it works." The first weeks of Digital Opportunity were extremely difficult. Thomas had only 2 employees, himself and a programmer who believed in the proposal. They worked in a rented room downtown, very different from the luxurious offices Thomas was used to. But little by little, the project began to take shape. Thomas partnered with vocational schools to train residents of Hope Springs in basic computer skills. Michael's mother, the one who knew how to sew, was one of the first hires to take care of cleaning and organizing the office. "Mr. Anderson, I don't know how to thank you for this opportunity," she said on her first day of work. "I'm the one who should be thanking you, Mrs. Johnson. You're helping me build something important." Mrs. Johnson, whose name was Patricia Johnson Williams, was 40 years old, had 3 children, and had been unemployed for 2 years. Her story was similar to dozens of others Thomas was getting to know through the social project started by his son. The first big contract for Digital Opportunity came from an unexpected source. A cosmetics company heard about Thomas's story through the press and decided to bet on his proposal. "Mr. Anderson, our company is interested in social impact projects," said the marketing director, a young woman named Rebecca. "We would like to hire your services to develop an online sales platform." We're honored by your trust, but I need to be transparent. Our company is just starting, and half of our team is in training. That's exactly why we want to work with you. We believe that companies with a social purpose deliver more sustainable results. The project was a success. The platform developed by Digital Opportunity not only worked perfectly, but also generated a 30% increase in online sales for the client company. But what was most rewarding for Thomas was seeing the transformation of the people he had hired. Sarah, the mother of one of the children Ethan helped, discovered a talent for graphic design. Samuel, a 50-year-old man who had been unemployed for 3 years, turned out to be excellent at customer service. Patricia Johnson not only took care of the cleaning, but also began to help with the administrative organization of the company. "Dad, do you see how smart Mrs. Johnson is?" Ethan commented one afternoon when he visited his father's office. "She has great ideas for organizing the work." "I do see, son, and I'm learning that I wasted a lot of time underestimating people." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. 6 months after the start of Digital Opportunity, the company already had 15 employees and a respectable client portfolio. Thomas had managed to prove that it was possible to combine profit with social responsibility, but it was at that moment that he received an unexpected call. "Thomas, it's Richard." Thomas could hardly believe it. His former partner, who had practically kicked him out of the old company, was calling him. "Hi, Richard. Is there a problem? I need to talk to you in person. Can I stop by your office this afternoon?" Of course, Richard arrived at the Digital Opportunity office visibly embarrassed. The simple, functional environment contrasted drastically with the exaggerated luxury of the previous company. "Thomas, I came here to apologize." "Apologize? And to make a proposal." Richard explained that the old company was going through a serious crisis. It had lost 3 important contracts and was being investigated by regulatory agencies due to questionable labor practices. The company's reputation had been seriously damaged after some reports from employees. Investors are pulling their money out, and the company may go bankrupt in the coming months. "I'm sorry to hear that, Richard." "Thomas, I know you have every right to tell me to go to hell, but I need to ask for your help. You managed to build a respected company in just 6 months, while we, in 15 years, created a toxic environment that's falling apart. What are you proposing?" "A merger. Your company absorbs ours, you take full leadership, and we implement your philosophy of business with social purpose." Thomas was silent for a few minutes, processing the proposal. "Richard, 6 months ago you told me my approach was corporate suicide. And we were wrong, completely wrong. The market has changed, Thomas. Customers want to work with companies that demonstrate real social responsibility, not just superficial marketing." "I need to think about it." "Of course. But I need an answer by Friday. After that date, it might be too late." That night, Thomas talked with his family about the proposal. "What do you think, Jennifer?" "I think you should decide based on your values, not the financial opportunity." "And you, Ethan? What do you think?" The boy, now 10 years old and visibly more mature after everything he had experienced, thought carefully before answering. "Dad, you always taught me that when we make a mistake, we have to own up to it and try to fix it. Uncle Richard is admitting he was wrong and wants to fix it. Isn't that what we should do?" "But son, they treated me very badly." "I know, Dad, but look how many people from Hope Springs you'll be able to help if the company gets bigger." Thomas smiled. His 10-year-old son had perfectly summarized the moral dilemma he was facing. "You're right, son, but I'm going to set some conditions." On Friday, Thomas met with Richard and presented his conditions for the merger. First, all employees of Digital Opportunity will be retained and have their salaries matched to those of the larger company. Second, at least 20% of annual profits will be allocated to social projects. Third, all hiring policies will prioritize people in socially vulnerable situations, provided they have the necessary qualifications. Fourth, I take over as CEO, but you remain as operations director, so you can learn firsthand how to implement businesses with social purpose. I accept all the conditions, Richard said without hesitation. Are you sure? You'll have to work side by side with people you once looked down on. Thomas, in the last 6 months, I've lost more money with toxic business practices than you spent building a sustainable company. I'm willing to learn. The merger was announced the following Monday. The new company, which kept the name Digital Opportunity, started with 45 employees and a diverse client portfolio. But the real test came 3 months after the merger, when the company competed for the largest contract in its history, developing an integrated management system for a supermarket chain with over 200 stores. Thomas, if we get this contract, our company triples in size, Richard commented during the proposal preparation. And if we don't, we continue growing at our own pace, no rush. Aren't you nervous? I am, but I've learned that excessive anxiety hinders more than it helps. The proposal presentation was unlike anything Thomas had done in his previous career. Instead of focusing only on the technical and financial aspects, he told the company's complete story. He spoke about Ethan, about Hope Springs, about the transformation he had undergone as a businessman and as a person. Gentlemen, our technical proposal is here in this document, he said, showing a folder. But our real proposal is there. He pointed to the team accompanying him, made up of employees from different social backgrounds, ages, and life stories. Each person on this team represents an opportunity that our society almost wasted. Sarah, our designer, had been unemployed for 2 years. Samuel, our customer service manager, was 50 years old when he got his first opportunity at a technology company. Patricia, our administrative director, started as a cleaner and specialized in management through courses the company itself provided. The executives from the supermarket chain were visibly impressed with the presentation. Mr. Anderson, how do you ensure that this diversity doesn't compromise technical quality? Because diversity doesn't compromise quality, Sarah replied, standing up. It only compromises prejudices. Our team delivers exceptional results precisely because every person here knows the value of an opportunity and works to honor it. A week later, Digital Opportunity was chosen to develop the project. The contract was worth $3 million and would solidify the company as one of the leaders in the sector. That night, Thomas came home with a bottle of champagne to celebrate with his family. Dad, is the company rich now? Ethan asked. The company is growing, son. But more important than becoming rich is continuing to make a difference in people's lives. Can the children of Hope Springs still count on us? They can, and much more than before. Thomas had ambitious plans to expand the company's social projects. He wanted to create a professional training program in other underprivileged communities, establish partnerships with universities to offer scholarships, and even build daycare centers so single mothers could work without worry. But it was Ethan who gave the suggestion that would change everything. Dad, why don't we teach other companies to do what you did? What do you mean, son? Uncle Richard learned that it's better to be good to people. Maybe other business owners also want to learn but don't know how. Thomas stopped eating and looked at his son with admiration. Son, you just had a brilliant idea. Ethan's idea evolved into a new branch of the company, Corporate Social Responsibility Consulting. Digital Opportunity began offering training and advisory services to other companies that wanted to implement genuine social practices. The consulting arm's first client was a food company that was facing labor issues. The owner, a 60-year-old businessman named Anthony, was known for being extremely demanding and difficult to deal with. Mr. Anderson, I don't really believe in all this talk about being a good company, he said during the first meeting. But my lawyer said I need to improve my image or I'll lose important contracts. Mr. Anthony, we're not here to improve your image. We're here to genuinely improve your company. What's the difference? Image is a facade. Real change transforms the company from within, and that naturally reflects on the outside. For 3 months, Thomas worked with the food company's team. They implemented employee appreciation policies, training programs, improvements in working conditions, and a social project to support underprivileged families in the region. The transformation was astonishing. The company, which had faced an 80% annual employee turnover rate, reduced that number to 15%. Productivity increased by 25%, and the company began receiving social responsibility awards. "Thomas, I must admit I was wrong," Anthony said during an evaluation meeting. "I used to think that being a good boss was synonymous with loss. I discovered it's quite the opposite." "What else changed in your perception?" "I discovered names. For 15 years I didn't know the names of half my employees. They were just numbers on the payroll. Now I know their stories, their families, their dreams. And I discovered that when you treat people like people, they work with their hearts, not just their hands." The success of the consultancy began attracting attention from the specialized press. Thomas was invited to give lectures at universities and business events. His story, which had begun with a 9-year-old boy asking for food on the street, became a case study in business schools. But for Thomas, the most moving moment wasn't any lecture or business award. It was when Ethan, now 11 years old, showed him an essay he had written at school about my hero. "My hero doesn't wear a cape or have superpowers. He is my father, and his superpower is having learned to truly see people. Before, my father only saw money and success. After we started helping the children of Hope Springs, he learned that real success is when we can make other people smile. Today, our company helps hundreds of families, and my father has become the kind of person I always wanted to be when I grew up. He taught me that it's never too late to change, and that our mistakes can turn into successes if we have the courage to try to be better." Thomas cried as he read the essay. He realized that by trying to become a better father for Ethan, he had become a better person for himself and for all the people around him. 2 years later, Digital Opportunity had 120 employees and had become a national benchmark for companies with a social purpose. Thomas was invited to join the boards of non-governmental organizations and participate in public policies for job creation. But he never forgot where it all began. Every Friday, without exception, he and Ethan still visited Hope Springs. The neighborhood had changed drastically. Many families had gotten jobs through the network of contacts that Digital Opportunity had created. Some had managed to move to better houses. Others had set up small businesses. "Dad, do you remember Michael?" Ethan asked during one of these visits. "Of course, son. He told me he wants to study to be a businessman like you." "Really?" "He said he wants to create a company to help other children like we did." Thomas felt immense pride realizing that the example was multiplying. The children who had been helped by Ethan were growing up with a mindset of solidarity and social entrepreneurship. Michael, who was now 11, really showed a genuine interest in business. He had organized a small group of children from the community to sell homemade sweets, and all the profit was used to buy school supplies for families in greater need. "Michael, you have a talent for this," Thomas said, talking to the boy. "How about coming to visit our company one day? You can learn how real businesses work." "Really, Mr. Anderson, you would let me?" "Of course, and who knows, when you grow up, maybe we can create a partnership." Michael's eyes shone with joy. For the first time in his life, he had a real perspective for the future, a concrete dream to pursue. That night, during family dinner, Ethan made a reflection that deeply touched Thomas. "Dad, sometimes I think about what it would have been like if those men hadn't taken pictures of me that day." "What do you mean, son?" "If they hadn't tried to blackmail us, perhaps you would never have truly gotten to know the families of Hope Springs. Maybe we wouldn't have created the new company, and a lot of people wouldn't have found work." Jennifer smiled at her son's reflection. "Ethan is right, Thomas. Sometimes the bad things that happen to us serve to push us in the right direction." "That's true," Thomas agreed. "If that blackmail hadn't happened, I probably would have stayed at the old company, making a lot of money, but losing both of you and losing myself." "And losing all the people we met who became our extended family," Ethan added, referring to the company employees and the families of Hope Springs. Thomas looked at his wife and son and felt a deep gratitude. His life had become infinitely richer when he learned to value people over profits. 6 months later, Thomas received a call that moved him deeply. On the other end of the line was Rebecca, the marketing director who had given the first contract to Digital Opportunity. "Thomas, I have a proposal for you." "What kind of proposal?" "Our company wants to invest in Digital Opportunity. Not to buy it, but to help you expand nationally. We want to replicate your model in at least 10 states across the United States. Rebecca, that's incredible. But why? Because over the last 2 years, we've seen up close the impact you make. Our company has also changed since we started working with you. Our employees are more engaged, our reputation has improved, and our financial results have grown by 40%. We want to spread this across the entire country. The proposal was ambitious. Rebecca was offering an investment of $50 million for digital opportunity to open branches in New York City, Los Angeles, California, Florida, Texas, Washington, Georgia, Arizona, Oregon, and Colorado. Thomas, imagine how many families you could help with a national operation. I need to talk with my family and my team, of course, but can you give me an answer by the end of the month? That evening, Thomas called an extraordinary family meeting. He invited not only Jennifer and Ethan, but also Mrs. Wilson, who had become an informal consultant for all the family's important decisions. Everyone, an opportunity has come that could completely change our lives, he began, and explained Rebecca's proposal. Dad, does that mean we'll have to travel a lot? Ethan asked, concerned. It means I'll have to travel more, son. But it also means we'll be able to help thousands of families all across the United States. What about the folks from Hope Springs? We're not going to abandon them, are we? Never, son, they are our family. But we can expand our family to include people from other places, too. Jennifer had a different concern. Thomas, are you sure you can manage an operation that size without losing the values we built? That's my biggest worry, too. How do we ensure each branch of the company maintains the same spirit of solidarity and respect for people? It was Mrs. Wilson who offered the wisest suggestion. Why don't you do a test first? Open one branch in another city and see if you can replicate what you did here. If it works, then you can think about expanding across the whole country. Mrs. Wilson is right, Ethan agreed. It's better to do it well in one place than to do it poorly in many places. Thomas smiled. His family had become his best consulting team. At the end of the month, he called Rebecca with a counter-proposal. Rebecca, we accept the investment, but we want to start smaller. We'd like to open 3 branches first. One in Washington, D.C., one in New Orleans, and one in Miami. If we can maintain our work philosophy in these 3 cities, then we'll expand to the others. Why these 3 cities? Washington, D.C., because it's the federal capital, and we want to influence public policies. New Orleans, because it's Jennifer's hometown, and she knows the local reality. Miami, because it was one of the first cities that invited our consulting firm to train local businesses. That makes sense. And the timeline? 2 years to consolidate these 3 branches. If everything goes well, then we'll talk about national expansion. Rebecca accepted the counteroffer. The investment was reduced to $15 million, but it still represented a unique opportunity for sustainable growth. The first branch was opened in New Orleans, with Jennifer taking over local leadership. It was emotional to see her return to her hometown as a successful businesswoman, offering opportunities to people living the same reality she had experienced in her youth. Thomas, I never thought I'd return to New Orleans like this, she said during the branch opening. When I left here 20 years ago, I was fleeing poverty. Now I'm coming back to fight it. The New Orleans branch was a success from the first month. Jennifer hired 20 people from the city's outskirts, implemented a training program in partnership with local universities, and secured 3 important contracts right at the start of operations. But the most rewarding part was seeing the impact on the community. Within 6 months, the branch had directly or indirectly helped over 100 families in the New Orleans metropolitan area. Mom, you've become a hero here in New Orleans, Ethan commented during a visit to the branch. No, son, I just became the person I always wanted to be, but didn't have the courage to become. The Washington, D.C. branch also prospered quickly. Thomas bet on a different strategy in the federal capital. Instead of focusing only on private contracts, the company began developing technological solutions for public agencies, always maintaining the philosophy of hiring people in socially vulnerable situations. Mr. Anderson, you're the first technology company we've encountered that has a clear social inclusion policy, said a ministry director during a meeting. This aligns with federal government guidelines for suppliers. Within a year, the Washington, D.C. branch had become a system supplier for 3 different ministries, creating jobs for 50 people and influencing other companies in the sector to adopt similar practices. The Miami branch faced the most initial challenges. Local competition was more aggressive, and some business owners saw digital opportunity as a threat to traditional market practices. Thomas, some competitors are spreading rumors that our company only gets contracts because we use cheap labor, reported Mark, the Miami branch manager. And how are you handling that? I invite them to see our operation. When they see the quality of our work and our employees' satisfaction, they stop talking nonsense. The strategy worked. Within 18 months, the Miami branch had earned the local market's respect and become a reference for corporate social responsibility in the Southeast. During this expansion period, Ethan was growing and maturing quickly. At 13, he had become a kind of young ambassador for the company, often accompanying his father to lectures and events. "Dad, can I make a suggestion?" he said during a trip to open the Miami branch. "Of course, son. Go ahead." "Why don't we create a program to teach other children how to help their communities?" "What do you mean?" "Like a children's social leadership school, teaching them they can make a difference even when they're small." Thomas was impressed by the maturity of the suggestion. "Son, this could be our next big idea." "Really? Really? Do you want to develop the project?" Ethan's eyes sparkled with excitement. "Can I really?" "You can, but with guidance from me and your mother." The Children's Social Leadership School project was developed over 6 months. Ethan researched teaching methodologies, spoke with educators and pedagogues, and created a basic curriculum to teach children from 8 to 14 years old about solidarity, social entrepreneurship, and community leadership. "Dad, I want the first class to be made up of the children from Hope Springs that we've helped from the beginning," he said during the project presentation. "Why?" "Because they know firsthand what it's like to need help. Now they can learn to help other people." The school's first class had 15 students, all from Hope Springs. Classes were held on Saturdays at the Digital Opportunity Office and were taught by company employees who volunteered to teach. Michael, the boy who wanted to be a businessman, was one of the first to sign up. "Ethan, thank you for creating this for us," he said on the first day of class. "Michael, I should be the one thanking you. You all taught me that helping others makes me happier than anything else." The program was an immediate success. Within 3 months, the children had already developed 5 social projects of their own: a book drive for the community library, a clean-up effort of vacant lots, a community garden, a literacy project for adults, and a program for adopting abandoned animals. "Dad, look at what the children managed to do." Ethan showed a report of the activities. In 3 months, they collected 200 books, cleaned 5 lots, planted a garden that's already producing vegetables for 10 families, taught 6 adults to read and write, and found homes for 15 dogs and cats. Thomas Anderson was moved to see the results. "Son, you created something incredible." "We created it together, Dad, and now I want to expand it to other communities." "Expand how?" "Every child who graduates from our school can go back to their community and teach other children. That way, the project multiplies on its own." End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this story and where you're following us from. What was the moment that touched your heart the most? Do you believe it's possible to combine business success with social responsibility? Leave your honest opinion in the comments. Thank you so much for your company. Don't forget to leave your like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other touching stories.